I watched through the parking garage glass as Dad's phone lit up. He glanced at the screen, then answered with his important business voice. The one he used when he wanted people to know he mattered. My name is Rachel Torres. I'm 29 years old. And I just watched my father demand to speak with me without knowing it. Let me back up. Growing up as the youngest of 3 kids in the Torres family meant growing up invisible. My older brother Marcus was the golden child. Harvard MBA investment banking, the son Dad actually wanted. My sister Jennifer got the looks and the charm, married a doctor, gave my parents the grandchildren they paraded around their country club. Then there was me. Rachel's just not ambitious, Dad would say at family dinners. Some people are built for success. Others aren't. Mom's version was gentler but somehow worse. Not everyone can be a high achiever, sweetheart. There's nothing wrong with being average. Average. That word followed me through childhood like a shadow I couldn't shake. I was average at sports. Average at school, well, that's what they thought. I actually graduated summa cum laude from state school, but Dad didn't come to the ceremony because Marcus had a work presentation that same weekend. Average at dating. Average at life. What do you even do? Uncle Richard asked at every family gathering. Still at that little job? That little job. As if property management was something embarrassing. As if working with buildings and tenants and construction crews was beneath the Torres family name. My father owned Torres Legal Group, a mid-sized law firm with 40 attorneys. Respectable. Successful. The kind of business that gave him credibility at dinner parties. My mother sat on charity boards and planned fundraising galas. Jennifer's husband was a prominent surgeon. Marcus made his money moving other people's money around and calling it strategy. Me. I managed properties. At least that's what they thought. Property management, Dad would say with barely concealed disappointment. Well, someone has to do those jobs, I suppose. What they didn't know, what I'd deliberately hidden for 6 years, was that I didn't manage properties for someone else. I owned them. It started when I was 23, fresh out of college with a business degree nobody in my family acknowledged. I'd saved every penny from part-time jobs, every birthday check from grandparents, every dollar I could scrape together. I had $47,000. I bought a foreclosed duplex in a neighborhood everyone said was transitioning. Which meant it was affordable if you could see potential instead of problems. I spent 3 months renovating it myself. YouTube taught me how to tile. A retired contractor I met at Home Depot taught me basic electrical. I learned plumbing from necessity when a pipe burst at 2 a.m. and I couldn't afford an emergency plumber. I rented both units. Cash flow positive from month 1. I didn't tell my family. Why would I? They'd just explain all the ways I was doing it wrong. Within a year I'd saved enough for a down payment on a small commercial building. A strip mall with 4 vacant units and 2 struggling tenants. Everyone said I was crazy. The bank almost didn't give me the loan. I filled those vacant units within 6 months. Raised rents responsibly. Built relationships with small business owners who needed space and couldn't afford the premium properties. I learned that success in real estate isn't about having the fanciest buildings. It's about cash flow, smart financing, and understanding what the market actually needs. By 25, I owned 6 properties. By 27, I had 14. By 29, I owned 23 commercial and residential properties across the city, collectively worth $67 million. My company, RT Property Holdings, LLC, generated $840,000 in annual net operating income. My family thought I managed apartment buildings for $45,000 a year. I let them think that. Not because I was ashamed of what I'd built, but because I'd learned early that my father measured success by how much attention it brought him. My brother's Harvard degree made Dad proud because he could brag about it. My sister's doctor husband impressed the country club crowd. My success was mine. Private. Practiced. Built in silence while they dismissed me at every Sunday dinner. Still renting out apartments? Dad would ask with that pitying look. Still doing that property management thing? Marcus would add as if I'd chosen something embarrassing. I'd smile and change the subject. 3 weeks ago, Dad announced at Sunday dinner that he was expanding Torres Legal Group. We're opening a second office, he said, cutting his steak with the precision of someone who believed even dinner should be a performance. Going to be big. Really establish the Torres name in the legal community. That's wonderful, dear, Mom said, beaming. Where? Jennifer asked. Downtown. The Riverside District. Prime location. I'm in negotiations now for a lease. I nearly choked on my wine. Riverside District. My newest acquisition. A mixed-use building I'd purchased 8 months ago. A 6-story former warehouse converted to office and retail space. Ground floor retail, 5 floors of office space above. I'd spent $8.2 million on the purchase and another $1.7 million on renovations. It was beautiful. Exposed brick, modern finishes, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. High-end but not unreachable. Perfect for growing businesses that wanted prestige without paying premium downtown rates. The building was 60% leased. I had 3 floors of office space still available. The building's called Riverside Plaza, Dad continued. Owner's some LLC. Probably a hedge fund or something. Doesn't matter. My broker's handling everything. He didn't even know he was negotiating to lease space in my building. Sounds expensive, Marcus said. You sure you can afford that location? Dad bristled. Torres Legal Group is extremely successful, son. We can afford whatever location we choose. Of course, Marcus backpedaled. I just meant, prime Riverside real estate, you know. Those landlords can charge whatever they want. Which is why I'm negotiating hard, Dad said. I'm not paying some inflated rate just because the building has a view. I've got my broker pushing back on every line item. I stayed quiet. Took another sip of wine. My property manager, Marcus Chin. Yes, also named Marcus, which had led to some confusing family moments, had mentioned we had an interested party being difficult about lease terms. Trying to negotiate down security deposits. Demanding excessive tenant improvement allowances. Pushing for below-market rates. I hadn't known it was Dad. Rachel, you work in property management, Mom said, turning to me. Maybe you could give your father some advice? Help him understand what landlords are looking for. The table went quiet. Everyone looking at me with that same expression. The expression that said, even though we don't take your work seriously, maybe you can be useful for once. I'm sure Dad's broker knows what they're doing, I said calmly. Well, of course, Dad said quickly. I've got professionals handling this. Top commercial real estate broker in the city. But if Rachel has any basic insights about how these things work, I suppose it couldn't hurt. Basic insights. From the woman who owned the building he was trying to lease. Landlords generally want stable, long-term tenants, I said. They value businesses that pay on time, maintain the space, and won't be a management headache. Everything else is negotiable, but that's the foundation. Right, Dad said dismissively. Obviously. But there's leverage in every deal. The key is knowing how to apply pressure. These LLC owners think they can charge whatever they want, but there are always other options. Other buildings. They need to know we're not desperate. He had no idea I'd already reviewed his broker's proposal. The terms he was demanding were borderline insulting. Below market rent, excessive improvement allowances, a lease structure that put nearly all the risk on the landlord. His broker was playing hardball, assuming the landlord needed tenants badly enough to accept terrible terms. What they didn't know was that I didn't need tenants badly enough to accept a bad deal. Especially not from my father. When do you expect to finalize the lease? I asked casually. Next 2 weeks, Dad said. The owner's been dragging their feet. Probably trying to create artificial urgency. Classic negotiation tactic. But my broker's not falling for it. We'll get the terms we want or we'll walk. Good luck, I said. Jennifer laughed. Look at Rachel acting interested in Dad's business. Character development. The table chuckled. Even Mom smiled. I smiled too. Because in 2 weeks this was going to get very interesting. The next morning, I reviewed the Torres Legal Group proposal with Marcus Chin in my office. They're really pushing hard on terms, Marcus said, sliding the paper across my desk. 5-year lease, $28 per square foot when market rate is $35. They want $150,000 in tenant improvements for a 4,000 square foot space. That's $37.50 per square foot, way above standard. And they want a 6-month rent abatement during build-out. I read through the proposal again. It was worse than I remembered. What did you tell the broker? I asked. I countered with our standard terms. Market rent, standard TI allowance, 2 months abatement maximum. They came back saying their client has other options and we should Reconsider our position if we want a quality tenant. I couldn't help but smile. Dad's broker was using his favorite move, the veiled threat. Walk away leverage. Work sometimes. Not this time. Send them our final offer, I said. Market rent, standard terms, 2 months abatement. Non-negotiable. And Marcus? Don't mention who the owner is. Just keep everything under the LLC. Marcus nodded. They're not going to like it. I know. 3 days later, Dad called me. Actual phone call, not a text. Rare. Rachel, I need a favor, he said without preamble. What's up, Dad? This building lease I'm working on, the Riverside Plaza building. The owner is being unreasonable. Completely unreasonable. My broker says they won't budge on terms. That's frustrating, I said neutrally. I thought maybe, since you work in property management, you might know someone. Someone who understands how to talk to these LLC owners. These people need to understand that Torres Legal Group is exactly the kind of tenant they should want. Prestigious law firm, stable income, long-term lease. We're doing them a favor. I almost laughed. He wanted me to help him negotiate against myself. Dad, property management and ownership are different things. I don't really have connections with building owners. But you must know people in the industry. Someone who could make a call, explain that this is a good deal they're walking away from. I can ask around, I said. Good. Because this is important, Rachel. This expansion is crucial for the firm. I'm not going to let some anonymous LLC owner ruin this opportunity because they're too greedy to see a good thing. Anonymous LLC owner. That was me. I'll see what I can do, I said. That's my girl. Maybe you're better connected than I thought. He hung up. I sat in my office staring at the phone, feeling that familiar mix of emotions I'd been dealing with my whole life. Frustration. Sadness. And underneath it all, a growing sense of resolve. I'd spent 6 years building something real. Something impressive. Something that proved I wasn't average at all. And my father wanted me to use my connections to help him take advantage of me. 2 weeks later, Dad called another family dinner. Emergency Sunday meeting. The lease fell through, he announced as soon as we were seated. The Riverside Plaza building. Owner refused our terms. Completely refused. What? Marcus looked shocked. I thought your broker said you had leverage? Apparently not enough, Dad said bitterly. These LLC owners think they can just sit on empty space and wait for someone desperate. Well, I'm not desperate. We'll find another building. But you said Riverside Plaza was perfect, Mom said. The location, the prestige. It was perfect, Dad snapped. Until the owner decided to be unreasonable. They wanted market rent, minimal improvements, standard terms. As if we're some startup that should be grateful for the space. I took a sip of water. Said nothing. Who even owns it? Jennifer asked. Some RT Property Holdings or something. Probably a hedge fund. These corporate owners don't understand relationships. Don't understand that a quality tenant is worth negotiating with. RT Property Holdings. My company. Said out loud at Sunday dinner, and nobody connected it to Rachel Torres. Did you try negotiating directly with the owner? Marcus asked. The broker tried everything. Owner won't even take calls. Just sends back rejection letters through their property manager. Completely impersonal. This is what's wrong with commercial real estate. No human element anymore. I almost smiled. The property manager was Marcus Chen, and he'd sent exactly 3 emails, all professionally declining terms that would have put my building underwater. I actually have a lead on another building, Dad continued. Not quite as nice but adequate. Downtown proper, not Riverside District. My broker's setting up a tour for Tuesday. You're giving up on Riverside Plaza? Mom asked. What choice do I have? The owner clearly doesn't want quality tenants. Let them sit on their empty space. See how that works out for them. That's when I made my decision. I'd been content to keep my success private. To build my empire quietly while my family dismissed me. It was easier that way. Cleaner. But watching Dad blame the unreasonable owner for not accepting his below-market terms, listening to him act like the victim because I wouldn't subsidize his expansion. Something shifted. I was done being invisible. Dad, I said calmly. What if I could get you a meeting with the owner? The table went quiet. What? Dad looked confused. A meeting. With the owner of Riverside Plaza. Face to face. Dad's expression shifted from confusion to interest. You know them. I have connections with the property, I said carefully. I think I could arrange something. Rachel, that would be, Dad stopped himself. Almost said impressive but caught it. That would be helpful. Very helpful. Maybe if I could explain directly what Torres Legal Group brings to the table, they'd reconsider. Maybe, I said. Can you really set that up? Marcus asked skeptically. I think so. Then do it, Dad said. It wasn't a request. Call whoever you need to call. Set up a meeting this week. Tuesday afternoon would work. I'll see what I can arrange, I said. After dinner, as everyone was leaving, Dad pulled me aside. Rachel, I know I don't say this often, but this could be really good for you. Making this connection. If you can actually get me this meeting, it shows initiative. Shows you're more than just, well, it shows you're trying. More than just average. That's what he meant. I'll do my best, Dad. I texted Marcus Chun from my car. Schedule the Riverside Plaza lease negotiation for Tuesday, 2 p.m. The prospective tenant wants to meet the owner directly. I'll be there. Marcus replied, You're sure about this? Very sure. Tuesday afternoon, I arrived at Riverside Plaza at 1:30 p.m. The building looked spectacular. Autumn sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the river sparkling beyond, the exposed brick walls glowing warm and industrial. This was mine. All of it. Marcus Chun met me in the lobby. Your father and his broker are in conference room A. I told them the owner would arrive shortly. Perfect. Let me talk to them first. I walked into the conference room. Dad looked up surprised. Rachel, what are you doing here? I told you I'd arrange the meeting, I said calmly. Yes, but, he looked confused. You don't need to be here for it. I can handle the actual negotiation. You've done your part. I think I should stay, I said. His broker, a sharp-dressed man named Tom, looked annoyed. Mr. Torres, with all respect to your daughter, owner meetings are delicate. We should keep this professional. Rachel, why don't you wait in the lobby? Dad said. You can tell me how it goes after. I don't think that's necessary, I said. Rachel, Dad's voice had that edge. The one that meant stop embarrassing me. I appreciate you setting this up. But you're not equipped for commercial lease negotiations. Let the professionals handle this. Mom had come to the meeting too, sitting quietly in the corner. Rachel, sweetheart, maybe your father's right. You've helped enough. I pulled out my phone. Texted Marcus Chun, come to conference room A. It's time. Rachel, what are you doing? Dad asked. Waiting for the owner, I said calmly. You don't need to. He stopped as the conference room door opened. Marcus Chun walked in carrying a leather portfolio. Good afternoon, Mr. Torres. I'm Marcus Chun, property manager for Riverside Plaza. Thank you for agreeing to meet with the owner directly. Dad stood up, extending his hand. Finally. Yes. Thank you for arranging this. I think there's been some miscommunication about our lease terms. Once your owner understands what Torres Legal Group brings to the table. Actually, Marcus interrupted gently, the owner understands perfectly. She's been reviewing your proposals personally. Dad caught that. Well, where is she? Tom the broker asked impatiently. We've been waiting. Marcus smiled. Looked at me. I sat down at the head of the conference table. Dad, I said calmly. I'm the owner. The conference room went completely silent. Dad stared at me. What? Riverside Plaza. The building you've been trying to lease. I own it. RT Property Holdings, LLC. That's Rachel Torres Property Holdings. I'm the owner. You've been calling unreasonable. Mom gasped. Actual audible gasp. Tom the broker looked at his papers, then at me, then at Dad. Is this some kind of joke? Not a joke, Marcus Chun said, opening his portfolio. Ms. Torres purchased this property 8 months ago for $8.2 million. She's invested an additional $1.7 million in renovations. The building is currently 60% leased at market rates, averaging $34 per square foot. The terms we offered Torres Legal Group were consistent with our terms for every other tenant. Dad's face went through several colors. Red, white, red again. You, he said. You own this building? Yes. That's impossible. You manage apartments. You make He stopped. Recalculated. How could you possibly afford? I own 23 properties, Dad. Commercial and residential. Collectively worth about $67 million. This building is one of my newer acquisitions. Mom made a small sound. Like she couldn't quite process the words. 23 properties, I continued calmly. I started with a foreclosed duplex when I was 23. Built from there. I've been doing this for 6 years. That's impossible, Dad repeated. It's all documented, Marcus Chin said, sliding papers across the table. Property records, tax returns, LLC registration, bank statements. Ms. Torres has been very successful in commercial real estate development. Tom picked up the papers. Read them. His face changed. These are legitimate. Of course they're legitimate, I said. Dad was still staring at me. 6 years. You've been doing this for 6 years and we had no idea. You never asked, I said simply. Every Sunday dinner, every family gathering you'd ask what I was doing and I'd say property management. Which was true. I manage my properties. You just assumed I did it for someone else. But, Dad seemed unable to form complete sentences. How did you, the money alone? I started small. Saved everything. Bought smart. Leveraged carefully. Built relationships with lenders who saw potential instead of assuming I was average. That word hung in the air. Average. Mom's eyes widened. She remembered. All those times she'd said it. Rachel, Dad finally said, his voice different. Quieter. I don't understand. If you were building all this, why didn't you tell us? Because you wouldn't have believed me, I said. And if you had believed me, you would have tried to control it. Give me advice I didn't ask for. Explain all the ways I was doing it wrong. This was mine. I needed it to be mine. But we're your family. You're my family that calls me average, I said calmly. That dismisses my work. That assumed I couldn't possibly be successful because I didn't go to Harvard or marry a doctor or work at a fancy law firm. The conference room was silent. Tom cleared his throat. So, regarding the lease terms. The terms I offered were fair, I said, cutting him off. Market rent, standard improvement allowance, reasonable abatement period. Your client wanted below market rent, excessive improvements, and terms that would put all the risk on the landlord. I don't accept deals like that. Not from anyone. But I'm your father, Dad said. Which is exactly why I won't give you below market terms, I said. Because that would be preferential treatment based on relationship, not business merit. Torres Legal Group would be a good tenant at market rates. But I won't subsidize your expansion. Dad sat back in his chair. Looked at the papers Marcus had provided. Looked at the building around us. Looked at me. You really own all this, he said. It wasn't a question anymore. Yes. And you've been successful. Genuinely successful. Yes. More successful than... He stopped. More successful than you expected? I finished. Stat. Much more successful. Mom was crying quietly. Rachel, sweetheart, we didn't know. We just didn't know. Because you didn't look, I said gently. Because you decided who I was when I was young and you never reconsidered. The meeting ended with Dad and Tom leaving to discuss options. No lease signed. No agreement reached. Just Dad walking out of my building looking smaller somehow. Mom stayed behind. Rachel, she said after the others had left. I owe you an apology. You don't. I do, she interrupted. We both do. Your father and I. We made assumptions. We stopped seeing you as someone capable of this. She gestured at the building around us. We saw you as our youngest child who needed guidance, and we never looked close enough to see what you were actually building. I didn't know what to say to that. Are you happy? Mom asked. With all this? With what you've built? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yes, I said. I'm proud of what I've created. I'm proud I did it on my own terms without asking for permission or validation. I'm proud I proved to myself that I'm not average. Mom flinched at that word. We shouldn't have said that, she said quietly. Any of it. You were never average, Rachel. We just couldn't see it. I know. She left shortly after. I stood alone in the conference room, my conference room in my building, and looked out at the river. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. We need to talk about the lease. and other things. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? I replied, coffee works, but the lease terms are non-negotiable. He responded, understood. Over the next week, things shifted in ways I hadn't expected. Dad signed the lease. Market terms. Standard conditions. Torres Legal Group would occupy 4,000 square feet on the third floor of Riverside Plaza, paying exactly what every other tenant paid. But more than that, something changed in how my family saw me. Marcus, my brother, called me to talk about investment strategies. Actually asked my advice. Listen when I gave it. Jennifer invited me to lunch and apologized for years of dismissive comments. I thought you were just coasting, she said. I didn't realize you were building an empire while we weren't looking. Mom started introducing me differently at her charity events. Not as my youngest daughter who does property management, but as my daughter Rachel who owns RT Property Holdings. And Dad was different. We met for coffee 3 times in 2 weeks. Real conversations. Not Sunday dinner small talk, but actual discussion about business, about building something, about the challenges of growth and risk and belief. I underestimated you, he said at our 3rd coffee meeting. For years. I'm sorry for that. I know. I thought I was protecting you, encouraging you to have realistic expectations. I didn't realize I was just limiting you. You were limiting your view of me, I said. I was never limited. He smiled at that. Sad smile but genuine. You know what the hardest part is, he said. Realizing that while I was so busy being proud of Marcus's Harvard degree and Jennifer's doctor husband, I missed watching you become more successful than any of us. I'm not more successful. Rachel, you're 29 years old. You own $67 million in real estate. You built it from nothing. That's exceptional. And I almost missed it because I was too busy assuming you were average. There it was again. That word. I'm not average, I said calmly. I never was. You just couldn't see it. I see it now, he said. Torres Legal Group moved into Riverside Plaza in March. Their space looks spectacular. Exposed brick, modern finishes, views of the river. Market rent, paid on time, exactly like every other tenant. Dad invited me to the opening reception. Gave a speech thanking the owner of this beautiful building for creating such an exceptional space for growing businesses. He didn't mention I was his daughter until after the speech, when people came up asking about the building. This is Rachel Torres, he'd say. My daughter. And the owner of Riverside Plaza. The pride in his voice was new. Hard-earned. But real. RT Property Holdings continued to grow. I acquired 2 more properties by summer. My portfolio hit $73 million. Marcus Chin kept managing day-to-day operations and I kept building. But the biggest change wasn't in the numbers. It was in Sunday dinners. Rachel, tell us about the Elm Street acquisition, Dad would say. Walk us through the financing structure, Marcus would add. You're expanding into residential development? Jennifer would ask, genuinely interested. I'd tell them. Share the challenges, the victories, the complex negotiations and construction setbacks and tenant stories. And they'd listen. Not because I'd demanded their attention. Not because I'd thrown my success in their faces. But because I'd built something undeniable. Something that proved without question that I was never average at all. I was just building an empire while they weren't looking. And sometimes the sweetest victory isn't forcing people to see you. It's building something so substantial that they can't look away.